Fireworks wishes you a safe and happy 4th of July.
I'm Tony Goldwyn. As an actor and a director, I attend a lot of screenings. But there's one that's different. It's important.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the Todd Allbaugh Show for Monday, June 16th. If you are watching the replay of the show, you only have about 30 seconds till we kick it off.
Screenings help diagnose.
From the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide in the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with Mr. Aaron Zommers, our producer and engineer. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on this Monday, June 16th, 2025. It is a great day to be Wisconsinite. Glad to have you along. Little overcast skies here at the world headquarters in downtown Madison, Wisconsin on State Street. Not sure, Zommers, if the weather is still being dictated by the Canadian wildfires, but some cloudy skies. Going to be some rain in the forecast next 2 or 3 days, maybe some severe weather in parts of Wisconsin Tuesday into Wednesday. And even right now, I went out for a little Wonder State coffee before the show, and it is sultry, as my grandmother used to say. It is sticky, and by the end of the week, exactly the kind of weather we know the Zommers does not like, 90 degrees and humid.
You can find me inside on those days.
Yes, indeed. Glad to have you along. Hopefully everybody who was celebrating had a great Father's Day weekend. Was up in Shawano, of course, late last week into Saturday. Saw Dad up there. Had a good time with him. My sister and brother-in-law and family came over. So that was a lot of fun. And then yesterday went kayaking with one of the greatest dads I know, Kurt Kohler, the father of my two godsons, and did a little kayaking with the youngest godson. Jason was home from Seattle. That was fun in Florsey. And we celebrated Kurt's virility and fertility. That really is what Father's Day is about.
Truly.
Is the fact that, yes, he is reproduced. No, he's a great dad. He's a wonderful guy, and seriously, one of the best. He leads. He's not a yeller. He's not a preacher. He just leads by example. And I think that all great dads do that. It's like, no, I don't need to yell and scream a lot. You just live your life the right way, and your kids learn from you. So it was a good time. How was your weekend?
It was also good. Spent some time with my family back in Manitowoc for Father's Day, and bought some ice cream for him because he loves ice cream. So that was my Father's Day gift. It's just ice cream. Nothing too creative, but we had fun. Well,
good. Glad to hopefully everybody had a great weekend. Big week ahead here on the show. Hopefully you're around. Lots of schools are out now, so kids are home hanging out, but all of us having to go back to work as well. Big show today coming up at the bottom of the hour. State Senator Kelda Royce is going to be along, Democrat from the Madison area. Of course, a member of the Joint Finance Committee. Going to check in with her. Looks like there could be some big news in terms of votes this week on the Joint Finance Committee. And also the Democratic State Convention for the Wisconsin Democratic Party was held this weekend. Get her thoughts on that. She was up at that event up in Wisconsin Dells. In hour number 2, then, what's worse? An ATV edition, if we can sneak it in, where it's a jam-packed show. At 3 o'clock, then also we have Tom Kircher from the Wisconsin Watch. Going to be taking a look at the top Wisconsin stories around the state with Tom. And then at 3:30 here in studio as well. Big in-studio day. All these guests in studio. We appreciate that. And it's going to be one of the folks from the communications of the Clean Wisconsin on it's Pollinator Month. Remember, some people do the No Mow May. Well, here's something I think we could all get behind. Pollinator Month. Whether it's honeybees or hummingbirds, whatever it is, all these pollinators and what we can do to support that. Your phone calls as well along the way. So big show, and hopefully everybody sticks around for that. Big weekend of news, of course. By now, many people are, I'm sure, up to date on it. But wanted to get to a couple of headlines. At the bottom of the hour, going to be talking with State Senator Royce, yes, about joint finance, but I want her take on what happened, the tragedy, the political assassination over the weekend in our neighboring state of Minnesota, and particularly for our listeners in Amory and WCFW in the Chippewa Valley. I think particularly, even Hayward and La Crosse, a lot of those areas get their television news as well from Minnesota. And the fact that this guy alleged, we have to use the word alleged, of course, at this point, assassin in Minnesota who dressed up as a police officer with a squad car and the whole works and hunted down people in elective office in Minnesota, killing the former Speaker of the House in the Minnesota legislature and her husband, and wounding, severely, gravely injuring another state senator and his wife in another shooting. And now, within the last hour or so, we are learning from a press conference in the Twin Cities today that this guy had also, in between the two shootings, he had also gone to the home of two other state legislators in Minnesota, one of whom was gone. She and her family were on vacation, went to another legislator's house, and a local police officer who thought that this guy was part of the response kind of scared away the assassin, and then he went to the home of the former speaker in which he allegedly assassinated and shot she and her husband. And also breaking over the last hour or so, some of the names, there was a manifesto, as they say, a list of people that this guy had targeted, some of whom were in the state of Wisconsin. And now it is being revealed, courtesy of WISC Channel 3000, the CBS affiliate here in Madison, that United States Senator Tammy Baldwin, Democrat of Wisconsin, was on the list. This is chilling. As someone who worked in the state legislature for a number of years, still know people working there. It's chilling. And I want to walk through, we don't have a lot of time here, but I'm at the bottom of the hour, we're going to get Senator Royce's view on this as a current sitting state legislator. But I was listening to, as they say, another network this morning, a friend of mine, and I thought she put it really well, better than I could. Because over the weekend, a lot of the discussion has been on the blame game with Republicans, people here in Wisconsin. A couple of people I actually consider friends. I disagree with them, or I respect them, and was perpetuating this. That this assassin was a Democrat. And how terrible this was. And trying to blame it political-wise. And we're going to play you some audio in a minute that proves that not to be true. But my friend I was listening to, she said it so well, we need to stop trying to spin this in political terms and just get to the humanity of it. This is terrible. It doesn't matter what this guy who's the alleged assassin, whether he voted for one side or the other. Anybody who does this is clearly mentally disturbed. But I also want to talk today a little bit about the rhetoric. From both sides, by the way. But in particular on the right. The vitriol and the rhetoric that may have contributed in some form to this guy carrying this out. I'm going to play, first of all, a little audio. And so this guy, this alleged assassin, was in his 50s, but apparently shared a big house with a couple of other guys. This guy is being described by, and by the way, a shout out to the great local media in the Twin Cities area. In particular to the CBS affiliate television station or radio station WCCO in the Twin Cities, and also the Morning Star Tribune, the Minnesota Star Tribune, doing yeoman's work of local journalism up there, who is getting the facts straight. This is why local journalism matters so much. So this was an interview. I think this one comes from the CBS affiliate. This is one of the roommates reading a text that he had gotten from his roommate shortly before he allegedly committed these assassinations.
I love you guys. I made some choices, and you guys don't know anything about this, but I'm going to be gone for a while. Sorry. Take your time. Maybe dead shortly. So I just want to let you know that I love you guys both, and I wish it had gone this way. I don't want to say anything more and implicate you in any way, because you guys don't know anything about this. But I love you guys, and I'm sorry for all the trouble this has caused.
That was from the Minnesota Star Tribune, the roommate of the alleged assassin in Minnesota. Zombers, we have time for the second one here, talking about his support. We'll come back to it. All right, on the other side. And the reason I'm playing this local reporting is not to, my point is not to make it about one political ideology or another. It's simply to set the record straight, because I'm embarrassed by some of the people on social media over the weekend who are going out of their way to characterize this guy as a Democrat when he was a registered Republican in Oklahoma. All right. So I guess the Zombers says we do have time for this. So here, let's play this and we'll discuss it after the break. This is the roommate again of the alleged Minnesota assassin on whether or not because many of the MAGA conservative right media is trying to paint this guy as a Democrat. Here's the roommate.
Can you talk about his politics a little bit? I know that you had some discussions. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, everyone's calling him a Democrat. He's not a Democrat. He would be offended if people called him a Democrat. Because of this board thing he was on for Governor Walz, it wasn't to serve. He was just serving the community. But I can't believe a political issue would cause him to do such a thing.
Did he ever bring up the senator or the representative who were targeted?
Like I was saying, no, he never talked about that. I didn't know those people. I didn't recognize their names.
Any politicians he mentioned?
Nancy Pelosi. He didn't like Jim Walz. Tim Walz? Didn't like Jim Biden. But
Tim Walz? What would you say about him?
Well, I mean, nothing. It's just normal. Oh, I don't like this. That Tim Walz did this. I don't like that he did that.
Did he mention the protests that were planned for yesterday?
He never mentioned the protests.
What do you make of everything that's happened here and the fact
Maybe I mentioned it to him, but I don't think he mentioned anything.
What would you tell him?
I would tell him to surrender himself so he can be taken alive, because he's like my best friend, so I don't want him to be killed. I don't want him to kill anyone else, So I think if I saw him, I could talk him down, but I don't know where he is.
And did he listen to any particular podcasts or TV shows or anything online that concerns you?
Well, you listen to InfoWars, but I kind of told us well, it's like 50% truth. I kind of said, don't take everything.
That's from WCCO, the CBS affiliate in the Twin Cities, the roommate of the alleged assassin in Minnesota, saying the guy listened to InfoWars and Alex Jones. Back after this.
I guess it was a little bit close.
0.7 WMDX.
Buying a home is a lot like eating pistachios. Some deals pop right open. Some take
And
a
at the
little
end
effort,
there, he
and
does
some,
also, after
well,
this,
some make you
say
wanna
they
grab a
both
hammer.
voted for Trump.
That's why you need Aaron Weber Group. We do the heavy lifting so you don't break a nail or your sanity trying to crack into the housing market. We've got the perfect place where you can eat pistachios in every room. So don't shell out your life savings on a bad deal. Call Aaron Weber Group, powered by Compass, today. We'll get you into a home that's nothing but perfect.
Summer is on at Sugar River Pizza with 3 awesome locations in Sun Prairie, Verona, and New Glarus. Grab a seat on the gorgeous patio and enjoy the breathtaking view. Catch live music every Thursday evening at their Sun Prairie.
Download the Civic Media app in the Google Play or Apple App Store and take us everywhere. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Wherever it may lead, and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Video Radio Network. Not sure if are we on the air, Zombers? I know we're having a little bit of technical difficulty.
Yes. For those of you listening on the air, apologies for that sound.
We a little gremlin, a few gremlins on the board. We're working that out. Sorry about that, folks. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, after the news, weather, sports update, ag report with Pam Yonke, State Senator Keller Royce will be here. Going to talk to her a little bit about this issue. We're talking about it's the headline everywhere, literally, that this assassination, what Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota called a political assassination over the weekend of the former Speaker of the House there. They call it the House instead of the Assembly, I believe, in Minnesota, and her husband, and wounding severely via gunshot a state senator and his wife in Minnesota as well. We now know that this shooter, this assassin, also had already visited 2 other homes of legislators in Minnesota that night, hunting them down. Also, we have heard now confirmed that Wisconsin U.S. Senator Democrat Tammy Baldwin was on the hit list as well. Reportedly, other Wisconsin elected officials were on the hit list. And I played the audio cuts before the break there. My point is not to blame this on. I don't think that every MAGA person or Trump supporter is a murderer or would do this. Absolutely not. But what ticks me off is that MAGA and Republican folks, who many of whom know better, Bill McCoshen, who tweeted this out, but one of the people who I consider a friend and a really smart guy, trying to make this about, well, you know, he was this alleged assassin was nominated by Walz onto a board, and somehow this guy was a Democrat. Which we just heard from the audio, clearly the guy was his own roommate said we were both Trump supporters, and that this alleged assassin listened to InfoWars by Alex Jones. Again, I'm not saying that means that all MAGA people are murderers, not at all. But why the heck are Republicans and MAGA trying to paint this guy as a Democrat when clearly he wasn't? He was reappointed. The governor preceding the Minnesota Star Tribune confirmed this, that the governor preceding Walz was the governor who appointed this guy. There's all kinds of state boards, and governors don't know all the appointees personally. So Walz just reappointed this guy. You know, he done a decent job on the board, I guess. That doesn't make him a Democrat. And in fact, we know he's a Republican. So I think we just need to set the record straight on that. But let's take the partisanship out of this and look at the tragedy here. And again, look at the rhetoric. The people in politics and people in the media use today to gin things up. And by the way, do you know what the makeup of the state legislature is in Minnesota? On the Senate side, Democrats held a 1-seat majority, 34 to 33. In the House of Representatives of Minnesota, Democrats were tied 67-67, so the speaker broke the vote. So the line of thinking is this idiot, this assassin, thought that by knocking off a Democrat from each house, that would give the Republicans the control in the Minnesota legislature. The rhetoric that Trump uses when he tells people, the Proud Boys and other white supremacist group, to stand by and stand back, it matters. Because, yes, the vast majority of people on both political spectrums are rational thinking people, but there's always some nuts out there that aren't. And when you feed that, that ultimately has dire consequences. Didn't have time to get into it at length today. But I was enormously proud of people that turned out over the weekend at the No Kings rallies, protests, all hundreds of thousands of people. Largely, mostly, 98% peaceful. A couple of people, a couple of yahoos in LA, but otherwise, by and large, peaceful. Contrast that with Trump's birthday parade, allegedly for the 250th anniversary of the Army. A small performance, a small outcome there. Was not what Trump had hoped. But I'm so proud of people that came out non-violently to exercise their Second Amendment rights over the weekend. Well done. 855-752-4842. Let's go quickly to Tom and Madison on MDX. Tom, thanks for calling. Just a minute left. What do you got?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I think we're at the point now where we really need to demand the resignation of Donald Trump. And I think also there are lots of Republicans who are wonderful people, blah, 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 but MAGA Republicans who don't condemn the actions of things like monetizing the presidency with watches and Bibles and hats and stuff like that. MAGA Republicans who don't condemn using the U.S. military against civilians. MAGA Republicans that don't condemn that are basically giving tacit approval. So I think we need to up the bar for that. If you really don't approve of that, we need to hear from legislators. We need to hear actual statements of condemnation for those actions.
Appreciate the call, Tom. Thank you so much. I would simply add to that it took hours for Donald Trump to put out a statement through his spokesperson. And then when asked by a reporter later in the day whether he planned to call Governor Walz of Minnesota after this tragedy, he said, I don't know, maybe. And then went on to say that Walz is a terrible governor. The callousness. The I really don't give a damn attitude. It's sick. It's absolutely sick. Let's go quickly to Ben in Eau Claire, WCFW. Ben, 30 seconds. It's yours. What do you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think we all need to sit back and wait. There's a lot of finger pointing on what side this guy was on. Was he MAGA? Was he a Democrat? The MAGA picture doesn't make sense. There's one crying guy that says he was his roommate. When this guy is married and his address from his affiliation and his appointment from Walz clearly shows he's
the press has already determined that this guy is a roommate and interviewed him directly. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me what side. I'm ticked off at Republicans and MAGA. Why immediately did they try to point the guy as a Democrat when clearly he's not?
It's gone both ways, and
it has. It had what the problem is that MAGA is immediately jumping to this. Ben, I'm not going to entertain that. I'm just. It's the MAGA and the Republicans and people who know better who immediately try to politicize this on the right. And it's sick. It's absolutely sick. And that's why I played the cuts. Not to politicize it, but to set the record straight. And great reporting by journalism on the ground at Minnesota Star Tribune and WCCO. Back with Kelder Royce next is the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Real news news and great conversation. 92.7 WMDX. This is your local civic media radio station. Want to hear even more? Anytime? Find all of it at civicmedia.us.
The issue of available labor for a lot of jobs in production agriculture still an obstacle. I'm Pam Yankee with a quick update on what's happening in food and farming news on a Monday. Some farms looking at robotics and technology to help. Others say that's not feasible. We'll take a closer look at a survey happening in Wisconsin to try to get a better gauge on where labor's situation stands. Talking about that next.
They say seeing is believing, and nothing catches the eye like the 7 bushel per acre yield advantage of Veltima fungicide over other fungicides. But don't just take our word for it. See it for yourself. Run a comparison of Veltima fungicide. Enter the Real Results Yield Challenge and experience the difference it makes in your fields. And when you share your experience with us, you'll get a chance to win a 2-year lease on a new truck. Sign up at yieldchallenge.basf.us. No purchase necessary. See official rules for details. Always read and follow label directions.
A UW-Madison researcher is currently asking farms across the state what their labor situation is and how they're trying to battle labor shortages. His name is Jeremy Foltz. He's a professor of agriculture and applied economics on the UW-Madison campus, and his research is funded through the UW Dairy Innovation Hub. He says 60% of our labor is foreign-born, and that's especially true on dairy farms. And he said, while many farms are looking at robotics as an option, it's not for everyone.
One of the things we're looking at is how technology might respond to a labor shortage. And that includes looking at who has currently adopted robotics and who is interested in doing that. And we think that mid-sized farm, 150 to 300 cow is where the robotic solutions have potential. They're, as everybody knows, quite expensive, and it's quite an investment to change how you do things. The robotics seems to be a solution for either a brand new farm or a farm that wants to totally reinvest in how they do things.
Jeremy Foltz, an ag economist on the UW-Madison campus, he says that the survey is gathering data on what the farm workforce looks like today on dairy farms and what it may look like in the future.
On a dairy, decisions are never made in a vacuum. Your products, technologies, protocols, they're all connected. Or at least they should be. Introducing Empowered Dairy from Merck Animal Health, the only full solution portfolio in the dairy industry. Empower is more than just powerful identification, monitoring, and biopharma tools. It's about how they work together to eliminate guesswork and solve specific problems. Learn how at m-power-dairy.com.
And tomorrow we'll get a sneak peek at Wisconsin Farm Technology Days. It's going to be at Clinton Farms in Bear Creek, August 5th through the 7th. Follow us on social media. We'll be there. That's a look at food news on a Monday. I'm Farm Director Pam Yankee.
Local radio for you and your community. It's Civic Media's mission with stations across Wisconsin. Find your favorites at civicmedia.us.
Partly cloudy, warm, and muggy today, with highs reaching the mid-80s and a chance for showers and thunderstorms late tonight. Pretty much overnight, they're going to roll through with chances of gusty winds and hail. A few of them could linger early tomorrow morning, and more of them are expected again in the afternoon. I'm meteorologist Brittany Merlot. Right now, it's...
Yeah, you can ask me whatever, and I'm here till
thanks.
as long as you want me.
I had the microphones off for a bit because I knew you guys had stuff to discuss.
Appreciate
We all good
that.
to have it on now?
All good. Yep,
Okay,
no
cool.
F-bombs.
Go slower.
Yeah, I think we might want to scoot the books.
There we go.
Toward.
That we're fine now.
Okay, sounds good.
Maybe drop off, and give us a few bucks. Yes, Nightlight with Pete Schwaba. Weeknights from 6 till 8 on your local Civic Media radio station.
Is the
and
volume
the
all right,
Civic
Senator?
Media
Testing
app.
1, 2.
I
Testing 1,
think
2.
so. How does that sound?
Your headset volume, sorry.
Oh, yeah, my headset volume's
Yep.
great.
All
Yeah,
right, cool.
Thank you.
That number that you mentioned of nearly $15,000 per person, literally about a quarter of the state's economy.
Basically a quarter of the state's economy coming from the federal government. I'm not hearing from Republicans in the state in their biennial budget planning any sort of contingency plan for major disruption in federal funding.
All right,
coming
20
into the
seconds.
state.
All right, thank you.
I was a stranger in this city, out of town where the people
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network, where it's now 35 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock on this Monday, June 16th, 2025. Glad to have you along with us. Joining us at the table here in studio in downtown Madison, the state senator from the 26th district here in the state of Wisconsin, representing majority of Madison, at least in the west side and parts, other little suburb areas thereof. State Senator Kelda Roy. Senator, always enjoy you stopping by, particularly your commitment to stop by as often as you can here on a weekly basis during the budget process. Of course, you're a member of the Joint Finance Committee, one of 4 Democrats who sit on the Republican-controlled committee, which is writing the budget right now. But I wondered if you wouldn't mind, I just wanted your take. In the last half hour we spent on the news, and I think is on almost everybody's mind over the weekend, this assassination, what Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota called it, assassination of the former speaker of they call it the House in Minnesota versus the Assembly. She and her husband were assassinated in cold blood. Another state senator and his wife were gravely injured, and thank God are appeared to be on recovery. And now, in the last hour and a half, we've learned via the Minnesota Police Department or their briefing that 2 other legislators were hunted. I'll use that term. One of whom was not home. She and her family were on vacation, and then another one that he had gone to, that a police officer basically scared off before he went to the former speaker's home and allegedly shot her and her husband. So there were a total of 4 legislators and their families that were targeted in this one night. And now also the last hour, we've learned via Channel 3000 here in Madison that Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin was on the hit list of this manifesto, in addition to other Wisconsin legislators. Your initial reaction, Senator?
Well, I'm obviously horrified by this political violence and any political violence. And I think we all need to be mindful of the language that we use as elected officials. And it's pretty hard not to draw a straight line between the rhetoric that some use in the anti-choice movement about those of us who are pro-choice and the violence that was carried out on Saturday. As for those of us Wisconsin legislators, I really, really appreciate all of the care and the comfort and support that I and my colleagues have received over the past couple of days as we have been, living with this horrible threat and this nightmare. And obviously our thoughts go out to our colleagues in Minnesota.
I know the Democratic State Convention here in Wisconsin was happening this weekend in Wisconsin Dells. I knew you were there. We'll get to what happened, some of the things there politically in a bit. But I had read that there was increase, because all this was breaking during the Democratic State Convention without compromising security details. It's my understanding that there was increased security put in place during that convention.
That's correct. And even before law enforcement had learned that there were Wisconsin legislators being targeted on this list, even after before we had learned that they had increased security already there.
You could talk about this as much or little as you want. Were you aware of the people that were on this list?
I am aware of who's on the list, but law enforcement has really emphasized to us that they do not want those names to be public because of the risk of additional violence or copycats. And I think, the point is really that anyone who serves the public could potentially be at risk like this, and it's not acceptable. Nobody deserves to put their life at risk because of the job that they have.
I think we're talking to State Senator Kelda Roy here, Democrat of Wisconsin. As a longtime legislative staffer who worked in the building, as it's called, the Capitol here in Madison, and knowing people who still work there, I go back to Act 10 during 2011. 100,000 people protested peacefully in the state capitol. Yeah, there was a lot of yelling, and it got a little scary at times. I'll from my vantage point, that's true. But my former boss was also on what's known as SCIRB, which oversees the Capitol grounds. And I can tell you there was almost no actual physical damage to the Capitol from that. Also, my boss was the only Republican who voted against Act 10, but he didn't reveal that till the very end. there were people picketing on his sidewalk in Richland Center. And his reaction, it was going over the winter, and his reaction was to go get a snow melt and put it on, because he was afraid somebody was going to slip and hurt themselves.
Right. Make sure that insurance policy is up to date. Right,
but my point is, Wisconsin has a history of demonstration, of political activism, but not political violence.
Absolutely. And that is as it should be. I mean, there is nothing fundamentally more American than free speech and the ability to go make your voice heard. And we get to have policy disagreements with each other, but we do not get to hurt each other or settle those disputes with a gun. And I think that is really the difference here. And I have always been concerned about the safety and security of public officials and condemn all violence, no matter where it comes from. But I think, clearly in these times, what we can see is that there are some violent extremists on the far right, and particularly in the anti-abortion movement. And it is very, very dangerous, not just to Democrats and those of us who support abortion rights, but also to any Republican who may step out of line. I think Senator Lisa Murkowski has spoken about this.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit. And I might get accused of politicizing it, but I don't care, because my point is simply to get to the truth here, get to things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And you sit on the Joint Finance Committee last week. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Republican-controlled Joint Finance Committee voted down a motion that would have allocated dollars to provide protection to all Wisconsin Supreme Court justices, not just the liberal ones, all of them. And that was voted down. It seems eerily pertinent today.
That's right. Several years ago, we had a retired judge in Wisconsin who was executed in his home by someone who he had put behind bars. And so for years, the Supreme Court has advocated for having a marshal service. They are, right on the front lines. And there are people who are aggrieved by their decisions. And I said, we need to fund this. It is not acceptable for people to have to put their lives on the line or risk their family's safety in order to serve the public.
I just don't get it, because my former party likes to use the phrase "back the blue." Justices are part of the law and uphold the law.
Yeah, back the black, the black robes.
Right. And I just don't, in the scheme of things, I don't know if you recall off the top of your head, but my guess is, in the scheme of the state budget, this appropriation would have been
it's a tiny amount of money. I mean,
amount.
I don't know, maybe $1 million or $2 million or something. I mean, just a very, very small amount of money, considering how devastating it would be for our state if we had a Supreme Court justice who was assassinated.
I know this is all fresh, and again, talk about it as little or as much as you want. What's the temperature of your colleagues right now in the legislature? I'm assuming you've probably talked to some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just what's the feeling right now?
Well, I mean, obviously people are devastated and sad about the violence that has occurred against our colleagues. And also, for myself, and I think for others, we feel a sense of resolve and purpose. We know that part of the goal here of this kind of domestic terrorism and violence is to try to silence us or intimidated. And I'm not going to be silenced. I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm going to continue speaking out and doing my job, which is to try to build a better Wisconsin, to make sure that the kids growing up today have the same kind of opportunities and better opportunities than the ones that I was so lucky to have growing up here. And, I'm at the Capitol today, and I really appreciate the Capitol Police there and the increased law enforcement presence. I appreciate hearing from, talking with my colleagues about what are some measures that we can take in terms of policy and practice to help all of us be more safe. But, to me, I think we just feel like we are ready to get to work, and we are going to carry on in our mission.
Let's talk a little bit about that mission, Joint Finance Committee. We're talking to Kelda Royce, State Senator Kelda Royce, who is a senator from the 26th District here in Madison, member of the Joint Finance Committee, Budget Writing Committee, the right smack in the middle, right smack dab in the middle of the budget writing process. What is coming up this week, Senator? I understand that there may be a vote on the UW system.
Yes, we are hearing some really nasty rumors about Republicans plotting to make a multi-million-dollar cut to the University of Wisconsin. And keep in mind the broader context here of diminishing state support for the universities of Wisconsin over the last 40 years, gone from about not quite half of their budget to, between 11 and 15% of the overall budget. And the university, having hundreds of millions of dollars cut under the Walker era. So coming in, this is really a make or break budget for UW. They asked for $864 million, which would functionally put them back where they would have been had they kept pace with inflation and not had those cuts under the Walker years. And instead, if they're not going to get that, and they're not even going to get an inflationary increase, but a cut, that has to be vetoed. Just period. We cannot have a budget that forces further cuts on the university.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Are you advocating then if this proposal that you're hearing by your Republican colleagues would pass, is this beyond a light item? Is this a high enough bar for the governor to veto the entire budget?
Well, I don't know. Obviously, the governor is going to make that decision, but I think he's been very clear about what a priority it is for our state to have publicly funded higher ed. In the recent years, we have had 6 campus closures, and that is unacceptable. I mean, the young people in this state deserve every opportunity to go into higher ed if that is what they choose, if that is how they see their life, unfolding. And for them to have those opportunities snatched away is not acceptable.
90 seconds left. I totally agree that Republicans have underfunded University of Wisconsin, or whatever they call it now, but I'll still call it UW system. But my frustration has been with Governor Evers, and this somewhat, not specifically you, but some of your Democratic colleagues, is why hasn't there been more of a push to get to the root cause? Why hasn't someone said, let's have the Legislative Audit Bureau audit the University of Wisconsin system and see where there really are places for true cuts and get to the heart of, is this a funding problem or what is this? I just don't see a bipartisan commitment beyond you and a couple of other colleagues to get to the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the budget of the UW certainly over the last 15 years, but over the last 40, you can see a pretty clear story. They have really, really stepped up their fundraising game, corporate sponsorships, right? They have done an incredible job and we're also raising tuition, right? And attracting out-of-state students who pay full freight and help subsidize in-state students, right? They have done their part. And it is time for state legislators to do their part and fund the university at a level that makes it possible for every single Wisconsin kid who's willing to do the work to go there if they wish.
Would you be a supporter of Legislative Audit Bureau to audit UW system?
Well, yeah, I'm certainly open to that. But, I think the reality is they have internal and external auditors. They pinch every penny at the university because they are in such a constrained funding environment because of the legislature, right? I mean, this is a different conversation than 20 years ago, right? Or 40 years ago.
I mean, you might have a disagreement, but I just don't think some of the salaries that some of these administration people, I think Jay Rothman is grossly overpaid, but that's just my personal take on it.
Well, I mean,
the president of the system, by the way.
But, look at the athletic department, right? I mean, that.
Sure.
Right.
Right.
But I think if you, the reality is that it actually costs a lot to do education. It takes people and it takes smart people, and you got to pay them.
All right. Senator Royce, one of those smart people. Always glad to have her along with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Democratic State Convention. Our own Dan Schaefer recombobulated on the governor. We'll get the senator's take on that and what it means for Wisconsin Democrats moving forward. Don't go anywhere. It's the Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Wisconsin as a fish fry on a Friday night. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Blind Shot Social Club, a perfect blend of cool, casual dining, indoor golf with space for events, craft cocktails, and non-alcoholic drinks too. A hidden gem on Madison's East Side. Blind Shot Social Club, open to everyone. BlindShotSocialClub.com.
Are you living with dry AMD? If so, you could be on the road to geographic atrophy, or GA, a condition that leads to retinal cell death and permanent vision loss. But with Izervay, you can
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay slows GA progression by targeting a key source of retinal cell death, which may help preserve your vision longer. Izervay, or Avastin Capted Pagel, is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com. Paid for by Astellas Pharma.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Wisconsin. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the WIAA and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
At Hazelden Betty Ford, treating mental health isn't just about breaking old patterns. It's about braving new ones. As the leader in alcohol and drug treatment for 75 years, we know caring for addiction, anxiety, depression, and trauma goes hand in hand. We're here for you with new tools when life breaks down. Discover your path to better mental health at hazeldenbettyford.org/Wisconsin. Sponsored by Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation.
Found an injured, sick, or orphaned wild animal? Dane County Humane Society's Wildlife Center can help. Call 608-287-3235 or visit giveshelter.org/wildlife for what to do next.
Mommy, can I sit in the front seat just this one time? Please, please, please.
No, not yet.
But why?
Because I love you, and you're just
About
not
30
ready
seconds.
yet. Now, get in the back so I can get you.
Wherever it may lead, and having fun doing it. Some days more than others on the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along. It's 8 minutes before the hour at 3 o'clock. Coming up in hour 2, Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch will be here talking about news across the state of Wisconsin. And they're going to talk about pollinators. We had this big pollinator month here. This time of year, we're talking to how we can help our pollinators. We'll talk to folks at the bottom of next hour. Right now, we have State Senator Kelda Royce from Wisconsin's 26th district here in studio, member of the Joint Finance Committee. Senator, glad to have you here as always. Let's change gears a little bit, talk a little politics. Democrats had their state convention, as we mentioned earlier, at Wisconsin Dells. My colleague Dan Schaefer, founder of the Recombobulation Area, our political editor here at Civic Media, made a little news, as they say, wrote an op-ed saying that he thought it was time for the governor to pass the torch. That's to put it nicely. To be blunt, he just said the governor shouldn't run for another term, basically making the argument that he's done a great job, but we don't want a repeat of Joe Biden. Senator, you're a Democrat, a prominent one. What's your take?
Well, I mean, I think that, the governor has been clear that he's going to make a decision about that after the budget process. And I support him in that timeline and in that decision. I think he and the First Lady are going to take this seriously, and they're going to, come to a decision that works for them.
But is there a discussion amongst Democrats, and you can name names or not, however you want to do it, but is there some recognition that, oh my God, we don't want the same thing in Wisconsin to happen, what happened to Joe Biden nationally?
Well, obviously the wound of the 2024 election is very fresh for all of us. And I think, I think it's proper for us to be having a reckoning about, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And, she has been an icon of mine since I was little. And, what did it mean for the country when she kept that seat on the Supreme Court, and then it ended up being a Trump appointee. And we should be talking about what happened with President Biden. And obviously I wasn't in the inner circle, but it is infuriating to think that, the people who are around him did not recognize or did not admit that he really shouldn't be in any position to run for reelection. And so I think it's, absolutely fine for anyone to have any kind of conversation that they want. And I understand why Democrats are thinking about this, right? And I'm sure it weighs heavily on all of us.
And to be clear, our colleague Dan Schaefer did not insinuate that Governor Evers
Absolutely.
has the same sort
Of course.
of issues that President Biden seemingly had. But I think his point was, why not chance it? He made the point that he's done a great job. But look at Herb Coles, our former U.S. senator, was
Right.
in his prime and then reached a certain age and said, you know what, I'm going to pass the torch. And a lot of people were all shaky about that. But look, you had Tammy Baldwin win that election.
Well, that's right. And I mean, I do think that there is a real longstanding critique of the Democratic Party that we have this kind of gerontocracy, right, in Congress. And if you look at, over time, over my lifetime, the Democrats are the older ones, and the Republicans are always refreshing their ranks with younger folks. And we do have a great bench nationally and in Wisconsin of folks, who are ready to run for offices. And I mean everything from local office to state to federal. And we should be cultivating that and celebrating that.
One of the many things I love about you coming on this show is you're never afraid to have honest conversations. Senator Kelda Royce, you ran in the Democratic primary last time for governor. There was one. Should Governor Evers decide not to run, will you run?
Well, I am really focused, Todd, at this moment. And, really throughout my career, I ran for the Senate because I wanted to build a legislative majority again. I knew Wisconsin could be blue again, and that's going to be my focus. We are going to have a Democratic trifecta in 2026, and I'm going to devote myself, as I have in the last several election cycles, to making that reality come true.
If Governor Evers decides to run, would you consider primarying him?
Absolutely not.
Do you think any Democrat should?
I mean, I'm not going to be on that train. That's for sure. I'm on the train of having a Democratic trifecta and having a Democratic Senate in particular, because that's the body in which I serve, and that's where we can do it.
Only about a minute and a half left. Always goes too fast. Nationally, one of the main people, the teachers union, resigned from the DNC this morning, saying that she didn't want to be part of Ken Martin's agenda. You already had David Hogg leave last year and basically say he's going to take his $20 million in primary incumbent Democrats. Matt Flynn, former Wisconsin Democratic chair, was on this show last week and said Ken Martin should step aside and put Ben Wickler in there. I mean, it just seems that national Democrats can't get their crap together.
Well, I don't pay a ton of attention to stuff like that. I mean, I think of what is in my control, right? Here I am, a state senator in Wisconsin. What's in my control? I went and did call time this morning, right? I got myself out of bed. I tried to raise money for my fellow legislators. I'm going to finish up the budget papers I haven't read tomorrow, and I'm going to do my darndest to make the case that we need to fund and invest in our higher education system. I'm recruiting candidates and helping encourage people to run for office. I'm helping my colleagues feel confident and safe after the attacks. I'm doing what I can, and I think, I encourage everyone else to do that too. Wisconsin
Democrats elected Devin Remaker as the new party chair after Ben Wickler said he wasn't going to endorse, that he did endorse, and Joseph Pecky lost out on that. Did you have a dog in the race?
I mean, I back them all, right? I'm on Team Dem.
Come on,
I did.
I backed them all.
Yeah.
Who'd you vote for?
I would have been happy with any of them winning. And honestly, our work is the same. Our work is the same regardless of who is the chair of the party. I wish Devin really well. I thank William and Joe for running great campaigns. I think, our party is in a strong position in 2026, right? The backlash to Trump is huge, and we can see that in the protest march versus his pathetic, military half parade. And I want to harness that energy and not fight with other Democrats, independents, or fair-minded Republicans. I want to bring them in. I want to power electoral victories. That's my goal, and that's what I'm focused on.
Former great majority leader and state senator Tim Cullen, great Democrat, once told me, Todd, anytime a politician says anything other than a yes, it's a no, and every time they say anything other than a no, it's a yes. You did not say you would not run for governor if Governor Evers does not run.
Oh, Todd.
All right, we'll leave it there. There's a ending until next Monday. Always appreciate you, Senator Kelda Royce.
Great to be with you.
She said, I'm getting a poke under the table.
That's not true.
No, I'm kidding.
Madison's home for real news and great conversation. A Civic Media Station.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. In Minnesota, suspected shooter Vance Bolter making his first appearance in court after his arrest. He's facing state and federal charges, including murder and attempted murder for the deaths of state lawmaker and her husband and wounding a state senator and his wife Saturday. Hennepin County District Attorney Mary Moriarty.
We are at early stages. We will be reviewing all of the evidence from law enforcement as it comes in and working with our law enforcement partners to develop the case. I do want people to know that given the scale of this investigation, the review of evidence will take time.
Federal prosecutors say Bolter allegedly stalked lawmakers and had a target list that crossed state lines. Israel says it has full control of Tehran's airspace and strikes today shutting down Iran's state media. Iran also launching more missiles toward northern Israel. On Wall Street, stocks are on a rally after oil prices ended lower despite the escalation in the Middle East. This is ABC News.
Your news, conversations, and a whole lot of fun. It's all on your local Civic Media radio station or the Civic Media app.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson. Wisconsin Democrats who are on the Minnesota shooters list of targets are likely headed home. 11 of them were named on Vance Bolter's list, and some were staying elsewhere for their own safety. Authorities say the search for Bolter was the biggest in Minnesota history. He's accused of killing the state's top Democrat in the state house and her husband and shooting a state senator and his wife, who have now had surgery. Bolter was found about a 50-minute drive southwest of Minneapolis. When authorities found his car, they established a perimeter, called in helicopters, and looked for hours, and eventually Bolter surrendered. He's now charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Meanwhile, a national chain with locations in Madison is reportedly filing for bankruptcy. At Home sells furniture, housewares, and other home goods. There's one on the west side of Madison and another in the Easttown Mall complex. Home goods stores had a boom in business during the height of the pandemic. People spent so much time at home, they wanted to make their spaces as comfortable as they could. According to The Street, once At Home files for bankruptcy, it's expected to close 10% of its stores. And now for our weekly check of prices at the pump, here's Melissa Kay.
Gas prices fell 2.8 cents over the last week for an average of $2.92 today. This is 8.2 cents lower than a month ago and over 33 cents per gallon lower than this time last year. Officials at Gas Buddies say drivers should expect prices to increase. Israel and Iran are trading attacks, which has caused oil prices to surge to multi-month highs.
And today, a Wisconsin favorite celebrates 60 years. It's Quick Trip's birthday. The chain opened its first convenience store in Eau Claire on June 16, 1965. Now, the La Crosse-based company operates nearly 900 locations across 6 states.
Hello, Tom. Todd should be ready shortly. He's just finishing up talking with State Senator.
Sure. Great.
There he is, Mr. Kirchner. How you doing?
Hey, Todd. Very good.
Thanks for making time for it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to do it.
Where do you want to start here? You want to start with the state convention, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, that's what I said in the
sorry.
Yeah, start with the state convention, and then the second segment we'll
I'm
do the
trying to
fact
catch
briefs.
up. All right, great.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Also, Todd, are
Yeah.
we able to do the teaser for tomorrow since Matt Rothschild will be here?
We can. Let's do it at the bottom of the hour.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
fully stocked up with everything from sparklers to artillery shells, thunder snaps to 500-gram aerials. Freedom Fireworks guarantees to bring smiles and cheers to every backyard celebration. For fireworks from all the top brands and specials that can't be beat, go to freedomfireworkswi.com for a location near you. Freedom Fireworks wishes you a safe and happy 4th of July.
Here's the deal. We gotta set ourselves up. See, retirement is the long game. We gotta make moves and make them early. Set up goals. Don't worry about a setback. Just save up and stack up to reach them. Let's put
got about
ourselves
30
in the right
seconds.
position.
Thank you.
From the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Allbaugh Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Allbaugh.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Allbaugh, along with our outstanding producer, engineer, Mr. Aaron Zommers, on the board. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the broadcast here on a Monday, June 16th, 2025. It is a great day to be Wisconsinite. Sun trying to pop out here at the World Headquarters in downtown Madison on State Street. Going to be sultry, muggy this week. Looking for some rain Tuesday into Wednesday. Some storms might be strong. We'll keep you up to date on that. And then maybe 90 by the weekend. Glad to have you along. Many thanks to State Senator Kelda Royce for being here in hour number 1. One of the many things I appreciate about her is the fact you could ask her any. She's not one of these people that says, well, you gotta, only ask. No. She's like, anything you want. No preconditions, and I love that, and I appreciated her honest answers to some difficult questions.
Absolutely. That is also something I very much appreciate about her, and I'm glad to have in my representative since I live here in Madison.
There you go. Also, we forgot to mention this in hour number 1, because we had the big text to win trivia contest extraordinaire, and many people, including Mom, say, well, do people win these things? Yes, as a matter of fact. And on Friday, we had the big thing on the Bob Uecker tribute game in August. So we gave away, and it wasn't, I always forget, it's not just the news talk side. You have the music stations across Wisconsin as a part of Civic Media. So I wanted to let you know that Dawn up in beautiful Park Falls, who is listening to WCQM, our music station up there in Park Falls, Dawn was the winner on Friday of those Bob Uecker tickets to the Tribute of Life game ceremony back in coming up in August. So congratulations, Dawn. Thanks for listening to Civic Media. And also we had a couple of grand prize winners as well for those 2 big trips, and we're going to be notifying them soon. And as soon as we have their names, we'll release that as well. So thanks to everybody who played our Text to Win Scotty Summer Trivia Contest. Another one is coming up, I hear, in September. So be listening to that. But in the meantime, coming up this Friday, we're going to be going back to our free Friday ticket brewer giveaway. So stay tuned on Friday. We'll give you another opportunity to win Brewers tickets across the Civic Media Radio Network. Our next guest here at 9 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. You don't need to win a trivia contest to see his great work. All you need to do is log on to Wisconsin Watch, where you can find Tom Kircher and all the great reporters there at Wisconsin Watch. He joins us via StreamYard. Tom, thanks so very much for being with us.
Todd, you're welcome. I don't know if you allow bragging on a Monday, but I have a quick brag. I spent most of my news career has been reporting on politics, state government, that sort of thing. But for 17 years until recently, I also did some freelance reporting covering sports for the Associated Press, including Milwaukee Brewers games and one claim to fame is that I once made Bob Uecker laugh.
Really? Now that must be hard to do, maybe.
Don't you think? I mean, he's a super, super funny guy. You see professional comedians talk about how much they admire him, his humor. So yeah, I had a moment of pride when we were in the media elevator and he made a comment and I made a retort and he laughed. And I thought, wow, this will never happen to me again.
Now is this something we can share on
It
the
is not.
air? Or
It is not.
It is
No,
not.
it's-
It is not something.
I thought you might
Which is
go there. Yeah.
probably if you talk to people that actually hung around Euchre off the air, many of the things that made Euchre laugh are not things we can necessarily share on the air.
Well, to be, yeah.
He had a great sense of humor.
Well, absolutely. He's super funny, great timing. And I could tell when I made the comment, he chuckled that he seemed to catch himself for a moment. Like, wait a minute, I'm the funny guy. You're not supposed to make me laugh.
Well, that's a great claim to fame.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a Renaissance man, Tom Kirsch. Not only can you do great reporting, serious reporting, you can also make the late great Bob Uecker laugh and tell a great joke as well. That's fantastic. Tom, you were up in Wisconsin Dells this weekend, and at the Democratic State Convention there in the Dells, wrote a great piece on it entitled "Wisconsin Democrats Search for Answers as Fear of Autocracy Galvanizes the Grassroots." So give us the lay of the land. We had State Senator Kelda Royce, Democrat, here last half hour. Give us, first of all, just the serious side of this, because this terrible tragedy, this assassination of a city legislator and the attempted assassination of another and his wife, happened over the weekend in next door Minnesota. It was reported that because of this and because there were Wisconsin legislators on the manifesto of this assassin, that security was upgraded at the Democratic Convention in the Dells. Did you notice that? Was that felt? What was the feel, the lay of the land up there?
Yeah, just a moment before I get into that, just to set the stage a little bit. I covered the Republican State Convention last month in the Wausau area and took the approach of trying to interview rank and file party members about what was on their mind, as opposed to interviewing the elected folks. I took the same approach at the Democratic Convention. You're right. There was a little bit of a surreal feel in the sense that here we are at a resort in Lake Delton, a few miles from the water park capital of the world, right? Just fun and frolic. And when I arrived about 3:00 Saturday, the first thing I noticed was outside of the convention center next to the resort area, there were several police officers in the front door and a car nearby. And then inside, periodically throughout the afternoon and evening, I would see an officer walk through, and that was, clearly an indication of what had happened in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sobering times for sure. Again, you're a reporter's reporter, Tom, and out of all this tragedy, one of the things that I really admired was the local reporting, particularly the Minnesota Star Tribune and some of the WCCO staff. And I think just another example why we need great independent, or like Wisconsin Watch, or just great local reporters when times are tough, when tragedies strike. There's really no better way than for people who are on these beats who can get to the facts right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more the better, right? The more reporters you have to cover the field, so to speak, the more that have experience with the local scene makes a huge difference. And I think particularly an event like that, where the facts roll out in a messy way, it takes time to sort out what exactly happened. Was someone killed? Was someone injured? Was it a gun? Where did it happen? Who was this person? So, having reporters on the ground who have experience and can get as quickly as possible to the salient facts, just crucial.
All right, let's get to the more political interesting thing of the convention, and I'm talking about the Democrats elected a new chair. Of course, Ben Wickler, longtime chair, announced he would not run again. Said he wasn't going to endorse anybody, and then 2 or 3 weeks ago he said, "Actually, no, check that. I'm actually going to endorse my number 2 guy or number 1, however you want, my vice chair, Devin Remaker." Joe Zepecki, longtime communication strategist for Democrats, had already kind of announced and gotten a lot of endorsements. And then you had this guy, I believe his last name is Garcia, from the 3rd Congressional District, which was confusing to me because 3rd District Democrats have not done particularly well, but that guy threw his hat into the ring, and then all the chaos and fun ensued.
Yeah, it's certainly Ben Wickler was got several warm receptions, several standing ovations. He spoke at different points on Saturday, and a lot of adulation for him. So you have to imagine that his endorsement of Devin Remaker, who used to be the executive director of the state party, had to carry a lot of weight with the delegates who are the ones who voted and chose the current chair.
So Devin Remaker comes through, and help me understand this, Tom, because I'm a former Republican. I guess Democrats do things different in a lot of regards, but I don't understand why they do this whole ranked choice voting. I like ranked choice voting when it comes to like electing people to elective office, but to me it was Democrats trying too hard. Oh, let's set an example. Ranked choice voting to elect a chair. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Was this confusing to you or attendees, or I don't know?
It's not something I get into very much. I know that they approved that change, I believe, in 2020, and this is the first time that there's been a challenge for chair. So it's the first time they've used that. I think it would be interesting to see what people felt about it. Whether they would want to keep it going forward. But I have to say that the focus of my work on the weekend was speaking to the rank and file delegates, and I don't get the sense that was high on their priority list, the chair election or who won. They had other thoughts in mind.
Really? So I was going to say the ranked choice wasn't high priority. I get that because I'm a political nerd and a goofball. But so you're telling me that who became chair wasn't as big a deal as other issues?
Well, what I did is I would just buttonhole delegates and other guests. So not everyone there was an official delegate. There were guests as well. And started off with simple questions. Why are you here? And what do you want to see the party do? And I was struck by, and clearly this is not a scientific sample, but in interviewing 8 or 10 of them, 3 of them, middle-aged people, said they were attending their state convention for the first time. One of them even said, "This is the first time I've ever been politically active at all." And all 3 of them said that the reason that they took that step to come to the convention was their fear of President Trump threatening democracy. And that was echoed by another more veteran delegate from the Stevens Point area who's been to a lot of conventions, unlike those first 3 people. And he had the same take, that his primary purpose of wanting to come was to see what could be done to counter some of what's happening in Washington.
About a minute and a half left. Again, from an outsider, but as someone who ran internal party elections and worked in elected office on the Republican side, to me, Joe Zepecki, who's been on this show, is a great communicator and can do narrative well. I don't know Remaker. I've never talked to the guy. He does not seem to be the communicator that Joe Zepecki is, but clearly the delegates voting wanted him there. It seems odd to me, Tom, and this has been one of my frustrations with Democrats, is they're more concerned about the policy. Oh, we're very concerned about Donald Trump. Aren't we all? Or at least a lot of us are, including myself. But in order to defeat that, you have to have someone who has a good message. And it just seems weird to me that they weren't that concerned about who became chair. Like, well, it doesn't really matter. I think it does.
Yeah, and I don't want to give the wrong impression. I wouldn't say that the people I spoke to, the people I interviewed, say it didn't matter. It was just that they were there for a different reason. They were telling me, hey, we're very concerned about the state of democracy in the country, a shift toward autocracy, as some of them put it, and we want to get together and talk about how do we resist that. Certainly part of that is who's going to run the state party. But I think what was driving people to come to the convention, the ones I spoke to, was more the bigger picture.
Come back, talk more with Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch after this, and answer the age-old question, boxers or briefs? No. It's fact briefs. That's what it is. Fact briefs with Tom on the other side. Don't go anywhere. It's the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. All right. I didn't want to. I want to make sure we left. If you want another minute or two, is there anything on the Democratic convention you want to make sure you get in?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that theme of how do we try to preserve democracy was, the thrust of my story, and people had different takes on that. I mean, one guy in particular talked about the need for more active resistance, like Alex Padilla did, but I think we pretty much covered it. If there's two fact briefs I could talk about, that if you like, we can do that, and I could even give you a preview of the one I'm going to do next.
Sure, that sounds great.
That should cover the time.
Awesome.
Monona Drive, Williamson Street, and O'Dana Road. Plus IgniteGlassandGifts.com. Do your eyes a favor and see this stuff.
Wisconsin Watch has a partner organization, VoteBeat. Maybe you're aware of some of the reporting they do on elections. And, I was telling our VoteBeat reporter about this ranked choice stuff, and I don't know if he's going to take a look at doing something about it or not, but he was struck by, wow, they're really doing that.
I just think
it might be a little bit of insider baseball to me, but for people like you and I, I think it's pretty fascinating.
I was talking to Luke here this morning, and he's a Democrat, so I guess he was more into it. But I said any party election like that I've been to, you have the first round, nobody wins. Then the chair says, all right, the next round of voting will start in 45 minutes. The gavel slams down. Well, then it's Katie bar the door, and you have people from the two people left going to the third or fourth person saying, all right, you want a northeast Wisconsin, northwest Wisconsin Democratic office? If you vote for our person, you got it. There's all this kind of the smoke-filled room thing. Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes it fun and interesting. Where this stuff is just because, like, to me, if you were a Zepecky guy, well, pretty obvious. I think that your next choice would be Remaker. I don't know. I just I thought it was weird.
All right, here we go.
All right. Wherever you may lead and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Coming up after the bottom of the hour update, going to talk about Pollinator Month. That should be interesting. Looking forward to that. But right now, our guest from Wisconsin Watch is the great Tom Kircher, who was at the Democratic State Convention over the weekend. Tom had a couple of callers called in here. Says Tricia in Appleton called in. She was at the convention, and when she asked why they were using ranked choice voting, they told her it was a mandate from the DNC and that they were required to use it. That's I did not know that. I'm not sure. That's one person anyway. Yeah, all right. That's interesting. Call there from that individual. Any other before we get into the fact briefs? Anything else from the convention you wanted to wrap up on?
I think just one thought was that while there was agreement among the people I interviewed that their worry about the future of democracy was strong, that there wasn't a clear agreement on what to do. I mean, one of the people I interviewed said he wanted to see more resistance, like the senator from California who was arrested last week, interrupting a news conference from Trump's Homeland Security director. He felt like that sort of action needs to happen more, but I'm not sure there's a consensus on that.
Interesting. All right, Tom. I love this part of the segment, the fact briefs. Tell us what this is and give us a couple, please.
Yeah, so Wisconsin Watch has a feature called Fact Briefs. We look at a claim that's made by a politician. We structure it in the form of a question that we answer yes or no, and they're done in 150 words. So
Love this.
The most recent one I did asked whether the typical public housing tenant in the United States stays in public housing for 12 years. Is that true or false?
All right.
That statement
Go
was
ahead.
So Congressman Glenn Grothman from the eastern Wisconsin said that the average stay in a public housing project is 12 years. So this is one of the cases where he's correct. If you look at an average, it actually is 12 years, but misleading in the sense that that doesn't represent the typical resident. The average considers people who stay very, very long, like the disabled and the elderly. They may stay many, many years. That's going to raise the average, of course. But the median, if you think about the more typical, it's 4 years. People who live in public housing projects, half of them stay for about 4 years, half of them stay for less.
This is fantastic reporting. The reason I chuckled when he mentioned Congressman Grothman's name is because I know Glenn from my years working in the state senate when he was a state senator. He's an intriguing, eclectic guy, but yes, Congressman Grothman is want to kind of select certain things, and I think this is just unfortunate, his statement. I'm so glad you've corrected this, because you look at the disabled or people who might not have the ability to get out of public housing versus, as you said, the median, where people, if you give them some help, they move on and get out of it in, what do you say, a median age of 4 years.
Yeah, again, what he said was accurate. It's just maybe needing a little more context so you don't get the wrong impression that the typical public housing tenant is staying 12 years when in fact the typical tenant is quite a bit less. Although some people would say 4 years is an awful long time too.
Right. Tom Kircher, next fact brief, please.
Mm-hmm. So another one we looked at is has to do with the big beautiful bill, as the president calls it, that's being debated still in Congress. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple claims from our Wisconsin lawmakers, Gwen Moore, the congresswoman from Milwaukee on the Democratic side, Ron Johnson, the Republican senator. Both talked about how that bill is projected to add at least $2 trillion to the federal debt. And that's true. When we looked at the nonpartisan analysis from a number of different organizations, they all came up in the range of $2 to $3 trillion in debt over 10 years if that big, beautiful bill becomes law.
Very interesting. And so there's and it's fascinating. Gwen Moore and Ron Johnson, very two diametrically different people on the political spectrum, and for completely different reasons wanted to point this out, I would say.
Yeah, and I think we just wanted to weigh on this because there was a number of statements made that people who are supporting that bill believe it'll generate enough economic growth that, in fact, there won't be additions to the debt. But that's an argument to be made, but that's not shown in the nonpartisan analyses that we looked at.
Always great to talk with you, Tom. Do you want to tease anything forward, stories that you're working on, either you or the great folks at Wisconsin Watch?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So as we did with the Republican State Convention, we did produce several fact briefs out of that, and that's our plan for the Democratic Convention as well. The one I've started to work on, I don't know the answer to, is there a rural county in Wisconsin where more than half of the residents receive SNAP food stamps?
Is there a county in Wisconsin where more than half the residents receive food stamps? That's very interesting. I would think we're talking about total population.
So the percentage, and I would just add that we're asking whether there's a rural county. A person might think that it's an urban county would be more likely, right. But we're taking a look at whether there's actually a rural county in Wisconsin where more than half of the residents.
Can we say who made the claim yet?
Yeah, that was actually from the keynote speaker at the Democratic Convention, Raphael Warnock, the U.S. Senator from Georgia. And so it was interesting to me whether it's accurate or not. So we're going to take a look.
So did he name the county, or he just said there was a county in Wisconsin?
He did name the county.
Really? Can we say who it is?
Sure. He said it was Menominee County. So we're going to try to find out if he's accurate about that.
That is, I can't now see. That's a tease, ladies and gentlemen. We'll find out from Tom
Gotta
Richard
read.
next week. Very good. And look at Wisconsin Watch. Thank you very much, Tom. Always appreciate you. Come
You're
on
welcome,
back.
Zach.
We're going to talk about Pollinator Month on the other side. Stay tuned for news, weather, and sports. It's Civic Media's Radio Network. Thanks, Tom. Great job as always.
Hey, thanks, Zach. Good to see you.
Really appreciate you. Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Appreciate the invite. Bye.
Bye.
Social media. Share your thoughts when you find and follow Civic Media on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
In Wisconsin, fairs happen once a year, and there's a lot riding on a few days of good weather and community interaction. I'm Kylie Allen with the Midwest Farm Report, and Robert Holmes, the president of Spectrum Weather and Specialty Insurance, helps fairs protect their bottom line in the event of severe weather.
Yeah, I think we all have to remember that county fairs are about community, about FFA and 4-H, and bringing a work ethic from the kids and traditions, family reunion. I mean, there's fairs that the family meets at the fair every year. It's really about that kind of those kind of values, and in order to do those types of things at fairs, many times there's some financial needs, and so they bring in rodeos and things like that to sell some tickets. People can have some fun. They can generate some revenue.
So we're gonna do like probably 15 minutes
protected because
so.
next year, if they have a bad year, it might be a very minimal fair.
Please. Before we do anything else, I have to do
That was Robert Holmes, the president of Spectrum
show
Weather
tomorrow
and Specialty.
There's somebody else coming to the studio right away, so just bear with me for a second.
Ready whenever you are.
All right. 3, 2, and 1. Hey, everybody, join us next time. We'll be talking with James Small, Rural EMS Outreach Program Manager, about, better do that again. 3, 2, and 1. Hey, everybody, join us next time. We'll be talking to James Small. Messed that up to you. 3, 2, and 1. Hey, everybody, join us next time. We'll be talking with James Small about rural EMS outreach across the state of Wisconsin and also fusion voting. Join us. All right. Thank you. Only 3 times. That's it. Put that on, please.
Okay.
Just
what?
I don't know. We are streaming.
Yeah, we're off the air, but our stream goes out live right now.
Okay.
During the broadcast. So I always tell people.
So they'll be ready. That makes sense.
Don't say anything that you wouldn't want your friends and neighbors to hear, because there is a certain element to it. First of all, could you please pronounce your last name?
Yes, it's Barrio.
Barrio. All right, that's easy
So
enough.
like Barry with an O on the end.
All
Pretty
right.
easy.
I always like to ask because
No, that's good.
some of my pronunciation is not great. And you're communication director at Clean Wisconsin,
Mhm.
correct? All right. Great. We always like to start we'll ask you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, kind of where you grew up, whatever you want to say.
Sure.
And how you got involved with Clean Wisconsin. Then we'll get into actual Pollinator Month and what it means and what us as folks just in Wisconsin can do to help that out.
Sure. Yeah.
Sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Complete Civic Media lineup at
Is the volume in your headset okay? You want up or down? Test it, 1, 2.
I think it's fine. Is
All
this
right.
my volume control here?
Unfortunately, those are brand new and
They don't do
not hooked up
anything.
yet. They're
Mine could just
it's
be for
actually
my
right.
own-
It's actually right
Maybe
here.
a smidge less loud.
Smidge less loud. I better test 1, 2, test 1, 2,
That's good.
test 1. All right, all right. And then basically, you're pretty much there. I always tell people kind of almost eat the microphone. So if you're back here, it's not going to pick up as much. So just make sure you're kind of you're fine just like that. Yep, awesome. Fantastic.
Into the soap. What if she doesn't smell good? I know she's beautiful.
It smells
What if she
terrible?
stinks? And no one is going to tell her that because she's Sydney Sweeney. Here's an open invitation to Sydney Sweeney. Come by the Nightlight Studios. I'll smell you and let you know if this is a good product.
Maybe drop off,
and give us a few bucks.
Yes. Nightlight with Pete Schwaba. Weeknights from 6 till 8 on your local Civic Media radio station and on the Civic Media app.
Carmelo Anthony for the Bail Project.
Bad news, you've been arrested. Good news,
you're innocent until proven guilty. If you can pay your bail, good news, you go home to wait your trial. If you can't, sorry, you go to jail to wait. But sure, you still presumed innocent. But since you can't afford bail, you've lost your
Got
freedom.
about 20 seconds.
All right, thank you.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea. Sail
Welcome
away.
back to the Todd Allbaugh Show across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. 35 minutes now past the hour of 3 o'clock on this Monday, June 16th. Glad to have you along. Summer's on the board. Joining us here live in studio, always love when that happens, we have Amy Barrio, who is the Communications Director of Clean Wisconsin, to talk to us a little bit about Pollinator Month. Amy, first of all, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
All things considered, doing well. It's almost summer. I was going to say springtime. As a guy who is affected by allergies, I'm not a fan of pollen, but I know it's very, very important to the ecology and environment around here. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first of all, tell us, Amy, a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Communications Director, as you mentioned, for Clean Wisconsin. I'm originally from Louisiana, hence the very long Cajun last name that I have. And, I bring that kind of perspective up here when I communicate about, the natural issues of our state, our clean water, clean air, healthy landscapes. Louisiana's a big outdoor state, and so is Wisconsin, so they have that in common. And I just have to, make it through the winters. And then this time of year, like this humidity outside, I'm totally fine with.
You feel right at home.
Yeah.
How long have you been up in Wisconsin?
I've been here for, I think, 14 years.
Oh, well,
yeah. I should be acclimated.
Now, it's very intriguing to me because Jacqueline, our Human Resource Director here at Civic Media, she's also a native Louisianan.
Okay, now we have to meet.
You
have to figure out where she's from.
We'll introduce you. But neither one of you have that, what I would call a traditional Louisiana accent. Is that something that you lose when you come up north? She says when she goes back down home, it comes out. Right.
Yeah. Like I'm fixing to go home in a couple days and it's already kind of starting to, I'm ready. Ready to slide back into that Louisiana, eat some crawfish and some crabs that my dad has, he's picking up tomorrow. So.
Right.
It comes out. It comes out. But when you're up here, you kind of like rein it in a little bit.
LSU fan?
Oh, I went to LSU. So
did you really?
I did.
Oh, very good. Jacqueline's a big, as I am, a college football fan, so she loves her Tigers.
Well, I'm going to have to meet this Jacqueline.
Yeah,
maybe I know her. I don't know.
You might. As they say, that's not why you called. But it's fascinating nonetheless. So tell us a little bit about, for folks that don't know what Clean Wisconsin is, what is the organization, and what is their primary focus?
So Clean Wisconsin is the oldest environmental group in Wisconsin. We've been working since 1970 to protect Wisconsin's clean air, safe water, our land, and our climate. So that's a lot of things. That's our environment. It's all those things that we rely on to be safe and healthy and happy in Wisconsin. Back then, we were called Wisconsin's Environmental Decade because I think the thought was, in this decade of 1970s, we're going to figure out all of our environmental problems. But that didn't turn out that way. So we made the name change, I think maybe 15 years ago or a little longer, to Clean Wisconsin. But the way we work on environmental issues is to kind of attack it from all sides. So we do policy work, we take legal action against polluters, and then we also do a lot of advocacy, generally public advocacy, like what I'm doing right now.
We've had Tia Nelson, the daughter of former Wisconsin Governor and U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson, who was the founder of Earth Day. And, of course, here in Dane County, just across the lake here, we have Governor Nelson State Park. And Tia Nelson is very proud of the fact that her father worked in a bipartisan manner to create Earth Day. And she has continued that tradition. And I just think, again, these issues of the environment, of conservation, of the outdoors, they really shouldn't be a partisan issue because we all enjoy, as it turns out, clean air, clean water, et cetera.
And if you look at, I think one of our kind of biggest victories that we've worked on in the 1990s was protecting the lower Wisconsin River, right? This place where many of us have canoed down it, not just the Wisconsin River, but like hundreds of acres around the Wisconsin River. And that was an enormous bipartisan effort to enact legislation to protect the lower Wisconsin River. And now it's the longest wild or natural riverway in the Midwest. And so it's something that we can all be proud of and we can all use. And you're right, it's not about what side of the aisle you're on. It's about appreciating what we have.
I mean, we didn't plan this, but I appreciate you bringing up the lower Wisconsin Riverway. I was just on it yesterday. I was kayaking with my younger godson and his parents. And I told him the story, and the quick version, my former boss, Dale Schultz, was considered a conservative Republican at the time. Spencer Black was considered a liberal Democrat, and they worked together to help co-author that legislation. Republican Governor Tommy Thompson signed it into law, and now this year celebrating 35 years of the lower Wisconsin Riverway, so that my godson and his family and I could kayak down it yesterday, and it looks pretty close to what it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, and it's remarkable. And that kind of progress doesn't happen on one side of the aisle or the other. It has to be everybody coming together.
Yeah, correct. So tell us a little bit about what a Pollinator Month is and why we should be concerned with it.
Well, Pollinator Month is just a moment to pause and to talk about what's going on with our pollinators and how to protect them. So probably when you and I were kids, we didn't think much about pollinators. Like there were bees around and you ran away from them or whatever. But around the late 90s, early 2000s, we started to see a huge decline in pollinator populations. In some areas, a 90% decline. And that is concerning when you think about one out of every 3 bites of food we take in the U.S. is because of pollinators. They made it happen. Our cranberries, our apples, our fruits and vegetables, all kinds of things, our nuts. And beyond just the human sort of self-centered look at pollinators, they are part of an important ecosystem, and they are telling us there's something wrong. And so we need to think about why they're disappearing and what we can do to make that situation better. And that's what the month is about.
We're speaking with Amy Berrio, who is the communication director of Clean Wisconsin here on Pollinator Month. I think you bring up that point. Oftentimes, well, it's just bees, or it's just honey. And it's so much more than that. When, as you said, it goes to our fruits and vegetables, that if we don't care about our pollinators, a lot of things we enjoy can be gone. So talk to us, I guess, a little bit about what's the biggest endangerment right now. Is it the chemicals? What is it?
Well, it's a combination. Like everything, it's always a combination of things. But the big thing is habitat loss. So you have in Wisconsin, a lot of conventional agriculture, corn and soybeans, kind of moving in on habitat for pollinators, getting rid of some of those native pollinator flower species. And you have climate change, which is, of course, on small living creatures. They experience those changes a lot harder. And then you have the pesticides. So the rapid decline in pollinator numbers coincides with the rapid increase in a type of pesticide called neonicotinoids. It's a class of pesticides that are neurotoxins, and so they attack the nervous systems of insects. And as those pesticides kind of rolled out, starting in the late 90s to the early 2000s, within 10 years, you started to see, hive collapse. You started to see bees that didn't know where they were supposed to be going, couldn't communicate well. And in fact, there's been research here at UW-Madison showing that really, really low doses of these kinds of chemicals can mess up a bee's ability to find its food, to be social in the nest, all these kinds of things. So it's a lot of factors. This certain type of pesticide is one of those factors, but certainly every time you take away a flowering plant that they feed on, that's another factor.
Is this pesticide one that's particular to a certain agricultural product?
Well, it is in the sense that, so let's say you're a conventional corn grower in Wisconsin, you cannot choose to buy a seed that is not coated with neonicotinoids. So if you're like, I don't want to use this, you can't find that supply. So it is in that particular crop incredibly widespread. And then when the crop has it, every part of the plant contains the nicotinoid because it's been coated on the seeds. But it's also like household plants and pet collars and things, all kinds of household products that are supposed to be kind of insecticides. You'll find that in. And it also is on plants like fruits, nuts, berries, things like that. That's not a seed treatment, but it's sprayed on afterwards. So it's, heavily used, I would say, all across the country, but especially here in Wisconsin.
Are there any proposals or legislation that you're aware of to cut back or eliminate this pesticide?
Well, some states have introduced legislation that's specifically about neonicotinoids. I think New York is one of them. I can't remember the other. But here in Wisconsin, there's been a bill introduced relatively recently, a pollinator package. And in that bill, it's really just a package of bills. One of them is about the DNR and not using neonicotinoids, or neonics for short, on their kind of plantings that they may do. So there's a lot of work going on. Clean Wisconsin is part of a neonic working group where we're bringing in farmers and experts from UW-Madison and elsewhere, and all kinds of folks from DATCAP, all kinds of people who are trying to solve this issue, because it's about, as we were talking about earlier, it's not just environmental groups say don't use this. We need everybody to kind of come together and be like, okay, this pesticide, number one, has been bad for pollinators, and number two, it doesn't appear to be totally effective in terms of increasing crop yield. So it may not be great to use from a financial standpoint for farmers. So how do we come together and address this problem? So this neonic working group is just getting off the ground in Wisconsin to try to solve this issue.
And are you aware of any research or science that shows these neonic, I guess we call them for short, passing on to humans that may eat these foods or whatever? I mean, years ago, people laughed at former Democratic U.S. Senator Russ Feingold when he was going after RBGH hormones and things in dairy. And, back in 2007, on a whim, I started drinking Organic Valley milk that doesn't have that crap in it. And by golly, it turns out, no, Todd isn't lactose intolerant. If you just drink the organic milk, that solves a lot.
Really?
A lot of the problem. So I'm a big believer that a lot of these chemicals or pesticides that in our foods are having an effect on us as humans. Do you find that? Is there any research that shows it with this?
Yeah, well, in fact, we just posted a research brief on our website at Clean Wisconsin that talks about that. So, when you put something on food, you're going to get some of it. You're going to ingest some of it. Also, most of the neonicotinoid that is, coating that seed, only about 10% of it actually in real life gets taken up by the plant. And the rest of it ends up in the soil and in drinking water. So what we've got the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection studies how much of these pesticides are getting into water wells in Wisconsin. And they're finding that, some of it is showing up in water wells, particularly in the Central Sands region of the state, where there's a lot of agriculture and there's a pretty shallow aquifer system. So more agrochemicals tend to show up in those drinking water wells. And there haven't been a lot of human studies, because it was always like, well, we have this new pesticide and it's great, and it goes after bugs, and don't worry about it. It was kind of the thing. So there haven't been a lot of human health studies, but there's starting to become evidence that fish are being impacted, birds in areas where these pesticides have been used are being impacted, and then on animal studies that are meant to kind of replicate what high-level exposure to humans would be. There's been some evidence of sort of a wide variety of health harms that could come from being exposed to high levels of these chemicals.
We're up against the clock. Can you come back after 2 minutes here? We'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. Amy Barrio is with us. She is the Communication Director of Clean Wisconsin. Talk about perhaps what we can do as Wisconsinites to help out our pollinators. Don't go anywhere. We're listening to the Todd Allbaugh Show across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Wisconsin is brought
I find this fascinating.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's great.
I think, when I first heard about neonics, it was when I was a reporter doing stories about hive collapse in Iowa. And I thought, well, they're just going to get rid of those then, because it seemed to be like we finally found out what's going on. And then to discover that, no, in fact, we're using much more than we were even back then is kind of disheartening.
It really is.
But,
I mean, I didn't know that. I'm learning. That's one of the great parts about this job is that, people say you just have people on you want to talk to yourself personally, and I was like, yes, that's but largely that's right. So I've learned something today, so I find it very, very interesting. Like I say, with milk, I was lactose intolerant, so I lived about 8 months in Florida for work. And I went to the Publix down there, and there's Organic Valley. They're based like 30 miles from my farm. That makes me feel like I started drinking it down there just out of nostalgia, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not having these stomach or digestive issues.
That is so interesting.
And I drink nothing but Organic Valley ever since, and my lactose problems largely disappeared.
That I just would never have thought about that, but I guess that makes sense. Well, I can give some tips. Because I don't want it all to be about neonicotinoids, but organic produce is something if you're worried about it to buy. But also, ways in your yard you can protect. You can help
absolutely.
Pollinators. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Cool. Sounds great. About a minute left.
Okay.
On WMDX Radio. Email Arthur, sales@WMDXradio.com. No more mold, no more damage, no more slipping and hurting. Make your ordinary bathroom extraordinary for only $99 per month. New shower. 4115 800-329 4115.
I guess I need to turn off your microphones yet.
Thank you, Terry. We appreciate it. Welcome back. Terry's been traveling around the world
in
on a great
discussions over the
expedition.
so-called big beautiful bill
So we have to
backed
see
by Donald
penguins.
Trump that's making its way through Congress. None other than Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson has emerged as the most prominent Republican critic of the bill, saying at a recent Milwaukee Press Club event that it is, quote, not even close to adequate. Johnson has said he wants spending cuts to go even further, including making cuts to Medicaid. But Johnson's position as a critic of this bill makes him especially influential in these negotiations. But let's not forget the last time he was in a similar position. In 2017, he was a critic of the Trump tax cut bill, but what he fought for was a tax break for certain
30
types of
seconds. Thank you.
businesses, perhaps not.
Welcome back to the Todd Allbaugh Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along. We're 8 minutes before the hour of 4 o'clock at the top of the hour. ABC or CBS News, depending upon which of our great stations you're listening to. Weather update, and then a great Mike Clemens. Yes, I know my colleagues. Our great sports reporter, Mike Clemens, will be in with a sports report following the Brewers. Got a nice win on Father's Day. Our own Luke Mathers was there with his dad watching the Brewers beat the Cardinals. And the Brewers getting ready for a very important series against the Cubs this week at AmFam Field. Clemens is all over that, and we'll bring it to us. And then Maggie Dawn and the Maggie Dawn Show from 4 until 6. Pete Schwaba and Nightlight, 6 until 8. Native Roots Radio with Robert Pilot, and then it is Rick Smith Across America. Another great lineup here at Civic Media. Right now, we're talking to Amy Barrio here at the desk, the communications director for Clean Wisconsin during Pollinator Month. Amy, thanks for coming back for the second segment here. Appreciate that. Yeah. Again, you said over the break, we don't want to make this all about the neonics, but I just find this fascinating that this one chemical has been so devastating to our pollinators. Before we move on from that, is it, I at least think of pollinators as bees. Are there other insects or species that pollinate beyond the honeybee?
Oh, sure. And the honeybee is not a native pollinator, so it's from Africa. We have about 400 species of native pollinators in Wisconsin, and that includes bumblebees. It includes the rusty-patched bumblebee, which was the first pollinator or the first insect ever listed as a federally endangered species. So when we were kids, they were everywhere, and now they're almost nowhere. So there are all kinds of pollinators and butterflies and many other types of insects out there that we're trying to protect.
All right. Let's go to move on to some of the solutions here. Things that we're not all scientists. We don't all belong to groups like Clean Wisconsin. What can us as just Wisconsinites all across the state do in our own little world to help pollinators?
Well, if you have a house and you have a yard, set aside a spot of that yard for pollinator-friendly habitat. So that means you're not mowing, you're not disturbing, you have some native Wisconsin flowers that pollinators like that you plant there. And that is giving those bees and butterflies and other insects a home. Because one thing I didn't realize until I started working with Clean Wisconsin and talking to folks was that these bumblebees, their homes are usually underground little tunnels. And so they're under the leaves, and they're there in the springtime, and they just need that cover to make their nests and rebuild. And when we start pulling all those leaves out and putting our mulch in and all that kind of thing, we disturb that natural process. So, keeping a part of your yard that's intentional is great. And then when you go to buy plants, ask, were these plants treated with pesticides? Because the one heartbreaking thing I think about is, well, I bought these plants at, the big box store, and I see these bees feeding on them, and am I hurting the bees with these plants or not? And so it's important to try to figure out, and that's kind of a hard ask in a big box store. So if you can buy your plants locally at the farmer's market or other places that are selling native pollinator plants, that's the best way to go.
Yeah, and a great shout out to one of our great sponsors here at Civic Media, Kopke's Greenhouse down in the town of Dunn, outside of Oregon. It comes up with the farmer's market here in Madison. They're a great local greenhouse and sells native pollinator species and plants there. So you're absolutely right. Let's talk a little bit about I know you have a list here of things that, what we're trying to say, Todd, that we intake as humans. We talked about, milk before, but not age old, but question is, should I spend the extra money to buy organic? Does it matter in cases like this?
Yes. So if you're worried about neonicotinoids being on your food, so again, I mentioned berries, nuts, corn. These are some of the foods that have been tested to show that on occasion they exceed the health limit for neonicotinoid substances on them. Buy organic, because they're not going to have those. I mentioned that conventional corn seed is coated with neonics. Organic corn seed is not. So typically organic produce does not use this particular type of pesticide. So if you're worried about pesticides and chemicals, then that's a good way to go. Still, though, we've got the goal of helping conventional farmers to use less of these harmful products as well.
About a minute and a half left. Other things that we could do across Wisconsin besides setting a portion of our yard or garden aside?
Well, I think, wow.
Let me
That's
ask.
a good question.
Well, no, I guess I didn't ask it very well. It's my fault. A lot of people, we treat our lawns because, we don't like the dandelions. We spray. Is that harming the pollinators to have beautiful lawns?
Let me give you an example. So I talked to my dad in Louisiana, and he's saying, man, he likes to garden, vegetable garden. He's like, I cannot get my squash to grow. There are no bees to pollinate the squash. And I thought about it. I'm like, you really spray your tomatoes a lot with insecticides. And so when you use insecticides in your yard, especially these neonics, they stay in every part of the plant. And then as the pollinators feed from plant to plant, you just have this sort of harm spreading around your garden. So you need to be careful. If you do need to use some kind of insecticide or other pesticide, follow the package directions. Don't think more is better.
Right.
We tend to think that. It's not better.
It's not better. Very quickly, where can folks find you at Clean Wisconsin? Website or socials?
Cleanwisconsin.org. We're also on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and those sorts of places.
Well, I encourage people to check it out. I've learned something today. Amy Barrio, Comms Director at Clean Wisconsin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, really
Appreciate
a
it.
pleasure having you back soon. It is pollinator month, so all of us should do what we can to help out our pollinators across the great state of Wisconsin. Many thanks to State Senator Kelda Royce for being here today, talking a little bit about Joint Finance Committee. Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch and his great reporting. And as we said, Amy Barrio here, the Communications Director at Clean Wisconsin on Pollinator Month. Mr. Zauber is doing a great job on the board. Stay tuned. Maggie Dawn is next. Tomorrow, join us, talk about rural emergency medical services all across the state of Wisconsin, a little on fusion voting as well. Thank you all for being here. Todd Allbaugh saying whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, do not give up. Keep banging your drum. We'll see you tomorrow.
Keep banging on, and your day will come. Keep banging on your drum, and they will hear you.
All right, everybody, we appreciate you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Adios.